Hi, everyone, and welcome back to an episode of A Brighter Future Starts Here, brought to you by the American Society for the Positive Care of Children. I'm your host, Tracy Kawa, and with us today is the amazing coach, author, podcaster, Halle Eavelyn. How are you, Halle?
I'm so good, Tracy. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you cleared your busy schedule to join us.
Very well worth it.
Yeah. So the question that I want to start with is there's a general awareness that we all just went through COVID and are still going through it. As moms, our kids, or as parents, our kids are going back to school. And every day we're getting phone calls. You know, there was a new case diagnosed in your child's class. So we're worried about that. We're on top of the kids with their homework. And you're a coach who coaches successful women, and when you coach women how to be successful, how can you coach for balance? How do you teach women, or where do you even start to teach women that, yeah, there's all this going on, but at the same time, we still need time for ourselves and, like you say, the goddess within?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good question because I feel for everybody. I mean, I do not have school-age children, but my assistant does. And, I mean, she just today, like, oh, I forgot to tell you she has a day off tomorrow. And the first day she went back to school, it was like some kid got, diagnosed with COVID in another building, and they took the kids back out for 2 weeks. And I'm like, that's not even logical. And so it's just been really when COVID first happened, I looked at the amount of time that it takes to process a pandemic. I used the 1918, Spanish flu epidemic, and you guys, it's like 3 years. And I immediately, when I read that, I was like, oh, that's what we're in for. So I hate to say this, but like we're halfway right now. Now it's not going to be all, lockdowns, et cetera, for the rest of the time, but it's still this extra thing constantly in your frame of reference all the time that you have to cope with every day, everywhere, except maybe in your home, and then still every day, everywhere. The slightest sniffle now all of a sudden is like, oh my gosh, it's, a death sentence, and which is not true, but it feels like it because the news media is just doing its job to make us all like hide our heads under the covers all the time. So the answer to your question is the first thing you do is stop imbibing the stuff that's really, really bad for you. I like to say, sip the news, don't gulp it down, right? So our objective in general is to be really kind to ourselves and to ask, what is it in this moment that would make me happier? What is it in this moment that would soothe me? What is it in this moment that would bring me joy? What is it in this moment that would make me feel less like killing everybody in the world, right? And I'm being sarcastic, but honestly, we get to those moments of just like, I can't take one more thing. And so the first thing to do is to, ask, well, what could I do instead? And look at what's going on in your life that you're doing like on a daily basis or a moment-to-moment basis. The news is a perfect example. If you read the news instead of watching it, that can help immensely because you can sip it 5 minutes instead of just scan the headlines, instead of reading the whole article, or instead of listening to everything the newscaster has to tell you. And by the way, on any given television show at night right now, there are approximately 14 commercials for medicine, for stuff that can make you sick. And then there's the whole pieces about the side effects and everything. And the next thing you know, you're, worrying about sudden death, which is, by the way, a side effect of a lot of these medications. And so it's like you're doing a double whammy on yourself, just taking in stuff. And television is a very feminine thing. We receive, which is a feminine concept, right? But what's being put out is the masculine energy of, death and fear and anger and horror. And that's all of that stuff, the principles of war are very masculine. And so we're in this place where it's like, oh, we just want to like relax after a long day, but we're relaxing with all of the like male energy being like thrown upon us in a way that makes you want to take a shower. So withdraw from all of that stuff. That can help. The other thing that has to be, you have to give yourself permission, right? Okay, you're in the car pickup line. Are you, checking Facebook again? Are you talking to like handling your business stuff? Or could you maybe take 5 minutes for yourself while you're waiting to pick your kid up at school, right? Could you maybe take 5 minutes for yourself after you drop your kid off? What's more important, going to Starbucks or taking 5 minutes to breathe? And by the way, if you can't get to 5 minutes, the 3 deep breaths, the belly breaths that we take where we feel our bellies expanding and contracting, where we're taking in those deep breaths of life, that's what I call them, that can help you center. That can help you get back to you. It can be that little, but the important thing is don't tell yourself, this is all I've got, I'm stuck with it. Everything that's going on has to stay exactly the way that it is, and I just have to suffer, which is what a lot of us do because we put ourselves last. There's so much more to say about this. I'm going to shut up for a minute. I'm sure you have more questions.
First of all, I love the analogy of sip the news. Oh my goodness, that is so great. Like we don't have to gulp it down. We don't have to ingest every tidbit. Just sip it. Just, read a headline here and there. Just taking a little bit at a time. But also it's so important. I agree with you about just taking a few deep breaths or some time to just breathe and sit and, sometimes even pat yourself on the back that like, I got through the morning. This is what I accomplished today so far.
I got through the last 5 minutes. I'm going to pat myself every 5 minutes. That's
right.
It's important. We all have the little girl inside of us who used to get taken out for ice cream because she did something really good. Good job, Tracy. Good job, little Trey. And now you're this grown woman, but there's this little girl inside of you going, where's my ice cream? Like, where's my good stuff happening? And where is somebody here to like take care of me and soothe me? And I feel like we all need to be, petted right now and told, it's okay, sweetie, we're going to get through this. We can get through this together.
Yeah. You know how I love stories. Tell me a story. Tell me a transformational story about somebody you worked with, somebody maybe who was in mom that, you gave some advice or awareness or you coached. Does anything come to mind?
Well, the one that came to mind, I think, is a little, it's like, it's a little out there. I actually worked with a woman recently. It's a podcast episode on Your Goddess Awakened. She had gone through the trauma of a miscarriage, and she had told herself that her child, the one that she had to, actually, it wasn't a miscarriage. It was like an abortion in the 8th month because the baby was going to be born like without a spine and would live for 3 minutes, and was the life he would have outside of her body was going to be the most traumatic thing ever, and then he would die. And it was like, so it was a horrible decision. It's the kind of decision that I believe the only abortions that take place that late in life are the ones that are necessary medically and are so traumatic for the parents. It's not even like they don't need laws against it because nobody would go through that unless they absolutely have to. But this woman had for 3 months had been crying every single day because she felt that she had, her son hated her because she'd had to do this terrible thing. But she felt that as his mom, even though he wasn't in the world yet, that this was necessary. And we helped her get over that hump of understanding. We actually were able to connect her with him on the spiritual plane, bring him in. And when she saw him, he was a grown man. And it was like, the angelic version of him. And he said to her, I love you and I'm so grateful and thank you. And of course, Spirit says the lessons are in the choosing. So this was like, it took something horrific for her and turned it into something that was bearable, something where she could see it as a lesson for like every soul in her family. And I feel like, as I said, that's an extreme story, but most of my stuff with moms is more about like time management, but
Yeah.
but that's what you asked, like what's coming to mind, and I was like, I can't think of anything else. I must need to tell
And it's a beautiful story. It's really, amazing spiritual connection story. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But we also
I never know what it is that I'm going to be called to do with people.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I meet somebody the first time, they're a complete stranger. And so somebody sent this woman to me because she said like she was just in agony. And, on the other side of that agony is peace. We are always called to things that are almost sometimes greater than we think we're going to be able to handle. I mean, for most of you, like you may feel like just having kids and raising them is greater than we can handle, like on a moment to moment basis. But it's so powerful because everybody in your family, in your immediate family, your children, your spouse, or your life partner, or whoever that is, those people are the nucleus of your soul family, and they all chose to come into this world, and I mean chose to come into this world to learn lessons from you and to be your teachers. I know a lot of moms who say like my kid is actually my teacher, and I don't even question that. Like that is absolutely on.
Absolutely. I mean, spot on. Even if you just think about it from the perspective of patience, understanding, teaching you about unconditional love. There's so many lessons in parenthood. Yeah. And let alone each and every experience that you go through that you've learned that adds an additional layer or an additional component onto.
Yeah. And even your fur babies, I mean, last weekend, for whatever reason, I just ended up telling my girlfriend on Sunday morning, I woke up and I just started talking about my dog who died in 2006, but who was my my companion and my fur baby for like 15 years or 16 years. And when he died in his passing, he taught me all the lessons that I needed. It was like a primer of how to die with grace, how to die with dignity, how to, cope with the coming experience of this transition. And in the moment of his passing, because I was there with him, I could feel his soul standing next to me, even though I could see his body in front of me. And it was like, I mean, such grace in that. And we if all goes well, we precede our children in passing to teach them what's to come and to teach them about the process of the circle of life. And we so much of our modern culture and certainly our modern religions have, except for some, have removed reincarnation from the cycle of life. But that cycle, which is very feminine, and quite in line with the goddess teachings, that cycle gives such comfort because it's all about the cycle of life and about the death and rebirth. And we see it in everything, but we don't see it in ourselves because we've been told that it doesn't exist. But of course, if it exists in every other regard, of course it exists in this regard. So we get to, we get to experience that relationship with not death, but with the rebirth and with that cycle. And I think that that's so important for us. Right now we're going through a cycle of death, both with people leaving our families because of COVID and other things, And I mean, I've seen like so many people leaving the planet right now, not just through COVID, through so many things. I heard about a woman yesterday, like 55 years old, a friend of a friend, dropped dead of a heart attack. And, there's like kiss your loved ones. And, we don't know like how long that's going to be. But there's also death cycles in our lives. Like right now, I would call this like a really like low point. But that means that the cycle of rebirth is just around the corner. It means that new things are going to be coming in. It means that the field lies fallow so that the new shoots can grow. And we have to take comfort in that cycle, and to know that just as there is ebb, that there will be flow.
Oh, that's beautiful. That reminds me of a book I read so many years ago, Judith Voigt, Necessary Losses.
Oh,
Read that. It just talks about things that have to come to a close in our lives. And that makes sense, because if nothing ever closed, nothing new would ever open.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. When one door closes, another opens. And I think that's so important. I want to go back to the thing we were talking about first, about, what happens after you give yourself permission. You're like, all right, this is what I want, but how do I do that? My experience is that for so many women, we treat ourselves as if until we learn otherwise, we treat ourselves as if we are the last spoke on the wheel of our experience. So there's your children, your work, your aging parents, your animals, the minutia of your day. And then you're like, and down here is that 30 seconds that I'll try to take for myself if I think that I can have the time. It's like, you're Cinderella picking the lentils out of the ashes and, hoping to be able to go to the ball like at some point in the super, super distant future.
Right.
But the reality is you're not the last spoke on the wheel. You is the hub, honey. Ooh. And if the wheel doesn't roll properly because the hub is wobbly, the whole wheel is wobbly. So don't tell me that your children don't know when you're like, mommy's busy right now, go away. And, I remember my ex-partner's daughter, she's 2 years old, and she's sitting in the chair and she pretends that she's on the computer keyboard, and he says, sweetie, you need to get down now, I need to work. And she turns to him and she yells, no, I work in something. And at 2 years old, she knew that was more important. And so she was like, let me make myself just as important right now. And it was like, we were both like, oh, like so taken aback, because, we were in our 20s and just like working 100 hours a week and hoping that it was like, we were doing the things that needed to be done for the kid. And no, it's like your kid knows. They're so intuitive. They know. And so, carving out time for those children is so precious, and carving out time for yourself without apology. If you can't do that, let me give you another suggestion. Don't look at it like I'm putting myself first, because so many of us were raised to be team players. The girls are all raised to like, if there's no I in team, honey. Well, BS, there is. Every one of you is an I to create the team, right? So how do you address that? Don't try to retool your whole programming from little childhood, because believe me, you've got it programmed in you. Look at it like this instead. If I tend to my own garden first, I'll have more harvest for everyone else. That gives you permission in a way that you can understand. I'm tending to my garden. Now I have more harvest to help everyone else, because you are the hub of that wheel, not the last little spoke. Yeah. All right. So there you go.
Your harvest. Yeah. Because the more you nurture your own garden, the more fruit and vegetables it'll bear, and you'll be able to, right, share that with everyone around you. So that's such a beautiful image. I love that.
Yeah. Women give away return 90% of their wealth back into the community. Men, it's like 30 to 40%. So the women have that understanding. It's why I firmly believe that the Dalai Lama was right when he said the world will be saved by the Western woman, because we're all in that, coming into that space right now. We really are.
Wow. I love the statistics and the facts that you have. Like, I've never heard anybody say that it would take 3 years to cycle through COVID. Although we did hear about the waves of it coming, but the way you phrased it, and then that women give back 90% to the community. And scrolling through my mind, I can see that. I can certainly see that.
Yeah. Just to be clear, it was 3 years to get through the Spanish flu pandemic.
Yeah.
But I believed when I first saw it that put us in a 3-year cycle before the masks will be put away, before people start to feel like life is, they're coming back to their lives now. That's what I think. But it just felt like it. I mean, that's what kind of hit me, settled on my heart in that moment was, okay, we're halfway through. So, yeah.
I'd like to cross back over to another point that you said earlier, where we were talking about, there's the spiritual side of things where you coach moms, women, and then there's also that time management side. Can you speak to the time management side of it? A little ethereal, a little practical.
Yeah, the masculine and the feminine. Yes, it's all about the balance. Here's the thing. You're doing too much, period, the end. And if you were given a week to live, what would fall away? What would you go, okay, that's not important. If you had a week to live, sit down and say, I'm going to be dead in 7 days. What's important? Or some guy is holding a gun to my head right now. I have to pick what's important, what's not important. What are the things that come to mind? And everything else, don't do it. Do it later. Every single inbox email feels important. And that whole zero inbox concept, here, let me show you. Let me just show you. Can you see on my phone right now? You can't see. I'm just going to tell you. There are 185,715 unread emails in my inbox right now. Now, I admit that's over like maybe the last 5 years. But the point is, if I touched each of those emails on an average of 30 seconds per email, and some of them would take 5 minutes and some of them would take, 10 seconds or whatever. But if I touched each one for an average of 30 seconds, by now I would have given up several months of my life to making sure I have a clean inbox. Wow. What's important? What's not important? Start looking at that. If I had 7 days to live, what would I do with my 7 days? COVID has shown us we don't have to commute to work, unless with few exceptions, right? COVID has shown us we don't need to sit in traffic. There are things that are just like completely illogical to me. Why do women's work days end at 5, but a child's school day, or men's and women's work days end at 5 and a child's school day ends at 2 o'clock? Why? Why does the child's school day start at 8 when the work day starts at 9? Why? Why would you get a child up at 5 o'clock in the morning when the child needs to sleep up to 16 hours a day and the child's natural bedtime is not 7 o'clock at night? Why? Like all of the things, right? There's so much illogical way about the way that we function in the world. So do you need to buy into that? And COVID taught a lot of us no is the answer to that. So now don't just buy into it. Question, is this right for me? Maybe, I know people who are like, yeah, I got to go save lives right now. I have to go be a fireman. I have to go be a police officer. I have to go be a doctor. Awesome. But if you're not one of those people, and if you haven't chosen that and really thought about it, and I guarantee you, nobody became a doctor or became a fireman or became a cop on a whim. You have to really be willing, put my life on the line, right? So if you're not, even if you're not one of those people, do you need to act like you are? Because, teachers, go do your thing, do that. Teaching stuff that is so important to everybody in the world. And by the way, we should be Shonda Rhimes was the first person, like 2 days into COVID, she goes, all teachers should be paid $1 million a year. Like, she had her children home with her for 5 minutes and she knew. And that's true. Like, we all need to like be paying teachers more. But if you're not in that kind of thing where you've made an agreement, like, this is how I'm devoting my life, ask, am I devoting my life to the wrong things? Because this is not, because my soul is being sucked dry. That is not helping your soul being sucked dry. I had a client who told me that he spent 20 years crying every single day to and from work. Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you do that to yourself? So yeah, that's the kind of stuff where, like, look, and COVID gave you permission to say, I'm sorry, that's no longer okay with me.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah.
That's so outrageous, right? I'm sure you wish you knew him 20 years sooner.
I know. Yeah, by the time I got him, he was already like feeling fulfilled on so many levels. But we got to do trauma clearing with him, and it's made a huge difference.
Yeah,
so,
I'm sure. My goodness. So if you had to give one last just golden nugget to our listeners who are comprised of parents, caregivers, teachers, what would it be? What are your thoughts?
You will never get to your deathbed and say, I didn't really work hard enough. But you will get there and say, I didn't take that vacation. I didn't visit that country. I didn't make plans. All the people I know, and I'm in my 50s now, so I've been like, nobody would call me young anymore, right? But I still wake up every day and go, yeah, like, what can we do today? Like, let's go, like, have a life. Even if all I'm doing is like, riding my bike that afternoon and, making my dinner or whatever that's enough. But, be in the moment to moment of joy. Go from that moment to moment. Look at, like, oh my gosh, my iPhone case is so cool. And look, I put this new thing on the back that has a ring. And look, it'll even hold a credit card. Ooh, and it opens. Isn't this cool? Like, how freaking joyful is that about my freaking iPhone case? Who cares? But it makes all the difference to go from that moment to moment joy. I cleaned my desk this week. Why? Because when I looked at it, I was like, that's not making me happy. That's not bringing me joy. And I didn't have time to clean my desk. So when I was on the phone, I would clean like this little piece of my desk, and then I would clean this little piece of my desk. And now I can I can see the surface again. Take those moments. Ask yourself, what is not bringing me joy in my vision, in my space, in the stuff that's in front of me? Change the curtains out of my office right here because they weren't like giving me joy. What is giving? Those are the questions that you want to be asking, because you guys, it's the little things that will suck your energy to the point where you have an autoimmune disease and do not know why, when all you need to do is just reclaim those little tiny microcosms of energy, until when you go through your day, you're like, what's bringing me the energy of yes versus the 12 no's that seemingly showed up? Because when you can go from the energy of yes to the energy of yes to the energy of yes, more beautiful things will happen in your life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And not only are you in a state of yes, you're in a state of discovery. And when you're in the state of discovery, then you're open to the possibilities of what you can find.
Boom. I love it, Tracy. You're so, you've got it even like 3 steps further. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us today. Oh, one more thing that I wanted to mention about how when my oldest son, he's 19 now, and as he was growing up, I always taught him to refuse, oh, Mom, it feels like I'm coming down with a cold. Nope, refuse it. Just say no to the cold. And that's literally the way that I taught him to think about, if he bumps himself or if he has a sniffle or a sore throat. I guess I should have asked you a little bit earlier, but how do you feel like that mindset plays into, becoming sick, or like you, maybe because you just mentioned the autoimmune disease, so it made me think of that. But how do you feel that mindset plays into, really truly becoming sick or staying well in the future?
I think it's everything. I say I'm not available for that. I'm sorry, I'm not available for that. Like, I'm not available for COVID. But I'm also not available for the flu. I'm not available for, like, I never get sick. The last time I was sick was like 3 years ago. I was leading a tour in Egypt. My business partner died 5 days before I got there. And no one told me on purpose, because almost his very last words were, "Don't tell Halle I'm in the hospital," because he thought he was going to recover. And instead he he didn't die. He went into a coma, but he never came out of the coma. And so when I got there, they told me, and I landed from the airport, and I had 75 people in the group, and we spent the next 2 weeks running 12 hours ahead, piecing everything together, because he was the kind of person where, like, he ran everything and like didn't give space to anybody to do it. So he would like micromanage stuff, which I think is probably why he died. Anyway, I came home from that trip, and everybody on the trip, like 75 people, 65 of them had gotten sick. And on the way home, I kind of like collapsed into the running that I had been doing 24/7 for 2 weeks. And all of a sudden I got super duper sick. But I was horrible. I had like 104, but I was only sick for 4 days, like raged through me like the goddess Sekhmet, It's like, we're going to destroy the field so that the new shoots can grow. But I think that unless like, when you overdo with your body needs a break. If you don't give your body a break, your body will say, "Hey, I got to plug the battery in somehow. So your 2-week vacation, why do you get sick on vacation? Because you finally let your guard down and it allowed your defenses in, and your body's like, okay, we've got to like really, really, really rest." And so then that's why you get sick. But if you can stop it beforehand, Oprah said, "Don't let the whispers become a brick." If you can stop it beforehand, now you get to that place where you are getting ahead of it. Now you're in control over the situation for real, as opposed to the reflexive control, the reactive control that we all think is control, which actually isn't at all. It's just, you trying to like stay ahead of the stuff. So when you say to your son, when you taught him that, I think that's incredibly valuable, because when you say like, "I'm not available for that," or "I'm, rejecting that," you're claiming the mindset of health. And then the other piece of it is to focus, like, what are you focusing on? I hope I don't get sick. I hope I don't get the sniffles. I hope I don't get a cold. I hope I don't catch what everybody else is having. That's like the negative side of this. Instead, we reaffirm every moment, "I'm so grateful for my health. I'm so grateful for having a healthy body." So I don't like talking about like, "Oh, I'm cancer free," or "I kicked my cancer," or "I beat my cancer." Why? You're calling it mine. So that means you're possessing it. It belongs to you. You belong to it. And you're saying the word over and over and over again. Don't beat cancer, stay in perfect health. Imagine that, instead of 60,000 people, I stopped doing the cancer runs. I looked up at the banner. It said 60,000 people fighting cancer. I thought, oh my gosh, what if 60,000 people affirmed perfect health? What an incredible gift that would be. That's the shift. That's the shift.
Wow.
Stay in the health, stay in the health, stay in the power of it. I
just got the chills on that last one.
It hit me really hard. I was like 4 years in, and I've had the teeniest, weeniest bit of cancer myself. It was a big wake-up call. Got discovered at stage 0. I was super grateful for it. Everything flowed beautifully. It was, if I told you that story, it's like the most incredible orchestration of grace. But it still was like, that and was enough for me for the wake-up call of what's possible versus what we're doing with our society about I'm telling you, there's 15 ads every night for all the diseases you can get. Is it any wonder that we are sicker as a country than we've ever been?
Right. Oh my goodness, there were so many gems that you gave us today, Halle. Thank you so much for your time and for being here with us. We really appreciate it.
And thank you. What you're doing is so important right now. And I'm really, I respect you so much, Tracy. I think what you're doing is so vital.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So to our audience, if you know another game changer like Halle Eavelyn, somebody doing incredible, wonderful things out there in your community, please drop us a line at info@americanspcc.org. And remember to catch a replay of this podcast on Facebook or on our website, americanspcc.org. And until next week, we will see you. Be well, and we are not available for any type of illness.
No, wait, we are available for only perfect health.
And we are only available for perfect health.
Tracy, do we have time for me to say one more thing? Is that all right?
Go for it.
Yes. Okay. So you can go to hallemindset.com. I know you're going to put up the URL, but it's, halleevelyn.com, but it's hard to spell. And people, it's two E's next to each other. So you can go to hallemindset.com. So Halle like Barry, hallemindset.com. And you can get a free piece called, I think it's called Slay Your Inner Critic in Under a Minute Every Time. And I want to offer that to all of your listeners or all of your viewers because we crush your inner critic. That's what we called it. Crush your inner critic in under a minute every time.
Thank you.
Because we want you, it's down at the bottom of the first page. We want you to know that you don't have to listen to the stories inside of you that are saying, I don't have time, I can't, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, any of those kinds of stories. That's your inner critic chattering at you. And there are some great tools in that freebie. So I want to gift that to your audience, especially. And yeah.
That's huge. Crush your inner critic in under a minute. I love it. Go to hallemindset.com.
Oh, thanks. Good for you. Thank you.
Awesome. 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 Thank you again, Halle. And to everyone, we will see you next Wednesday.
Bye.
Have a great week.